In this segment, we'll take a look at efforts in the Twin Falls District to preserve a piece of Idaho sheep ranching history in Craters of the Moon National Monument. President Calvin Coolidge designated Craters of the Moon National Monument in 1924 to preserve the unusual and weird volcanic formations and a scenic landscape peculiar to itself. In 2000, 755,000 acres of public land were added to the monument's existing area. Today, the National Park Service and the Bureau of Land Management are co-managers of the monument's wealth of natural and cultural resources, part of our nation's priceless heritage. Over a span of 15,000 years, the area experienced numerous volcanic eruptions. Molten rock flowing over the land created the unique landscape we see today.
Kipuka is a Hawaiian term that means window, and essentially it describes an area of higher elevation vegetated land that's completely surrounded by lava.
The Laidlaw Park Kipuka may be the largest in the world, encompassing nearly 90,000 acres. Sheep ranchers discovered early on that these island grasslands made ideal grazing ground for sheep and cattle. A place on the northwest end of the lava flow allowed cattle to cross into the Paddleford Flat Kipuka. Years later, the Cary-Kamaima Road was constructed at this spot. It allowed ranchers to reliably haul in water for their livestock. Bud Purdy's family was among the first settlers in the area.
I would be third generation here at the ranch. My grandfather, Kilpatrick, and his brothers, they built the railroad through here in 1882 from Shoshone to Haley, and they homesteaded 3 homesteads here on the ranch, and that's how they got started. When I came out here in 1938, we had about 8,000 sheep is what we were running and a couple hundred cows.
By the 1920s, there were more than 2.4 million sheep in Idaho. They were a significant part of the economy, but in the rangeland ecosystem, they presented a food source for predators.
The coyotes were really thick, and a sheep herder, and we didn't have guard dogs at that time either, was another thing. They would slip in. I lost about, I think, 100 sheep.
As predation losses mounted, the federal government took to coordinating trapping.
When we'd have trouble, we'd always call the government trapper, and a lot of times they'd come out, whether we was in Laidlaw Park or wherever we were, they'd come out and set some traps.
The government built cabins to house trappers it employed. Most have been lost to wildfires over the years. Built in the 1940s, the South Park Well Cabin is the only remaining trapper cabin in the monument.
For the public, it's hard to imagine history without seeing history, so it's kind of nice for them to be able to come out here and see this piece of the American West.
Monument managers realized that the only surviving trapper's cabin could easily vanish in a wildfire or be lost to the effects of time and weather. So in 2012, the BLM hired a heritage preservation company to stabilize the structure.
The building had problems with the roof. It was blowing off, the metal was gone, and on the other side, the roof boards were deteriorated. And on top of that, the foundation had been collecting water, and the sill logs and the spandrel logs were sort of melting into the ground. One of the tools that we use is this custom-made bracket, and we use this to lift up logs when we can't get anything else under the building. Once we have the building up in the air and we want to lift it up a little bit further, we use a grater blade, a jack, and on the inside of the building we have some blocking.
The South Park Well Cabin has been patched up on previous occasions, mostly to keep unforgiving weather conditions at bay.
There's been at least 3 episodes of applying daubing here. This little space in here, as you know, is called the chink space. So this chink space has wooden chinking in it. That's these little pieces that you can see right there. And then it has daubing applied over it, which is a wet mortar. So here we have this color mortar right here. We have an application on top of that by somebody else. A third application of something that looks like plaster of Paris. I really don't know what this is.
The latest round of work added a concrete foundation and a new steel roof. Joe and assistant carpenter Jake used only basic tools and worked by hand with great care.
We only work on interesting buildings and interesting places with interesting people. It's not all about the money. It's saving historic buildings and having a good time doing it.
The South Park Well Cabin is a place to experience and understand a chapter in Idaho's history and in the story of the settlement of the American West. A fairly well-maintained gravel turnoff from the Laidlaw Park Road takes you to the cabin. The BLM Shoshone field office can give detailed directions to the site.